Welcome back to 2022. I want to continue on with our series of 10 tips for student-centered learning in any classroom. And this is a series that I had started in the fall and want to kind of continue doing it. This is based off a presentation that I gave at Q last year. And so just some helpful tips. So looking at today's tip is all about peer review and feedback. And this actually comes at a really good time because according to our Bright Bites data, this is an area of growth for us. And so really looking at ways that we can have students give feedback to each other's work. So as an English teacher and as an avid teacher, I particularly love this because for one, it saves me time. And I also want students to see or have their work viewed by as like many people as possible, especially as we are talking about the editing and revising and really thinking about our work with it. But again, I think this can be used against like no matter which subject you teach. And so I'm just kind of thinking of different ways to do that. So one way that I give peer feedback, for one, we have a lot of programs that have built-in peer feedback. So No Red Ink has a built-in peer feedback feature that we can actually have students write something and then assign them peer feedback, and they can get, see each other's work with a rubric and everything right there. And it's super easy to use. Same thing with Turnitin. Turnitin also has a peer review feedback. So students can be given either anonymously or not each other's work and give feedback directly and with a rubric attached, give feedback and questions, specific questions for them to answer about their work, and also leave comments. So that's really nice features. So I highly recommend, especially if you're doing writing assignments, using No Red Ink and Turnitin. And if you need access to those, let me know. So even if you're not an English teacher, let me know, and I'll make sure that you have access to those programs. But a couple of program specific feedback that I use. So the first one is our Padlets. And so I like doing this one using Padlets, especially during distance learning we had it, but I also like it during classwork, like in person too. This is kind of a gallery walk of sorts. So again, when we were virtual, I did this as our gallery walk where I would normally have them like walking around the classroom. But it worked really well, and it works really well in person as well too, depending on what you have sign up. So this was their end of the semester, end of the semester project and the year project we did last year. And so I had students put their projects up on this Padlet, and so the assignment that I had was their document, like the actual document where they turned in their project and with all their links and everything. And then students went through with warm stems and gave some kudos and gave some feedback to students. So this one was all focused on like warm stems at the end of the project, but it could be like if you wanted to do this like with warm and cool stems, have students do that as well. So but I really like Padlet. For me personally, I really like Padlet in this demonstration as a way to demonstrate like end of the semester or after they turn in project to kind of give each other kudos with that. The other thing that is done really well for end of project feedback, especially like during presentations and things like that, was I created a Jamboard. So for each student, this one was a group feedback that they did. So they presented to their groups. But I put the warm stems here, and I just took these right off of our instructional coaching warm stems. So these might look really familiar if you've done learning walks or anything in years past, pre-COVID times. But these are just taken from our IC, and so it's the same ones that we were using as adults. So I just made it for kids, or for instead of the classroom, just change the word to project. I use these all the time in my classroom. So it could be like their poem, their story, just kind of thinking about those warm stems. And then after the student presented, then I gave them, like a minute or two to write a warm stem for this. So I've done this as a whole class before. So if they presented the whole class, I had slides made. Now keep in mind Jamboard, I think the limit is like 20 slides. So I had to make like multiple Jamboards per class, but that wasn't a problem. But I just made these Jamboards, put the student's name, and then I had the students, after they presented, they put in their warm stems for the person. So they got this like really nice feedback after they were done presenting. For more like in project based for more in project based peer reviews, one thing that's worked really well for me is I have this template here, and I'll put these links down below. And, or if you're on our slides, I'll make sure that this is linked with the template. But what this is, again, it took a little bit of setup work. So if you are wanting to use this template, let me know, and or I might create a video just on using this template, just so that to save you a little bit of time, because there's a couple of tricks that I use to make like multiple copies for most of my classes. But I just put in the student's name, or had them like claim a slide for their group and put in their name. And then they would put their project right here. So they would have a link to their project. And I usually like, I show them how to screenshot, and because I think it's important for them to understand how to use like Google tools as well. So I kind of build it in. So I had them like screenshot, insert the image, like link it up, but that's because I want them to know how to do that stuff in my class. And then I had students' names here. So the other group members filled out, had a row here. And then for each group member, they looked at the warm and cool stems. So this was a warm, like the links are up here for warm and cool stems. And then they looked at their rubric. So I changed this rubric based on what we're doing. And that rubric, then they like tallied up the score that they thought their partner earned. So they're getting a whole slide of warm and cool stems and scores so that they can take it back and edit and revise their project or their essay or whatever I'm having them do. So again, this particular template took a little bit of setup. Once you got the hang of it, it was pretty easy to like keep it going. And I really liked this one just because it kind of gave me a big overview of like, students just got like one slide of all of their feedback. They didn't have to go through multiple feedbacks. It was just all right there on one slide for them. And then, and so that's just another way to build in feedback. Another really easy way to build in feedback is through our Google Classroom questions. And so if you go to create and then create question here, it kind of assigns it as an assignment. And what I like about this is a really great tool for like online discussions or like online discussions. I use this for my current events, for them to talk about their current events. But where you can have them do is put the link to their project or their writing, whatever, like, so maybe they wrote a paragraph, or whatever link that you want them to put in here. And then students can reply directly to them here. So you can see like who's replied to who. Now, the one thing is I can look up, like I can see Abigail, what she wrote, but it doesn't give me like how many comments that she made, like other programs might. But this is a really easy way to get that peer feedback too. So if like you have, maybe you have them do a bell ringer and you have them write a paragraph or write, their response. They can write their response here or add any links that they might need to add up, and then have students just give each other feedback based on whatever rubric or criteria that you have. So this could be a really quick way to get peer feedback. Of course, there's lots of other ways to give peer feedback too. So if you have any questions about like how would I do this in a math classroom, or how would I would do this in my history classroom or whatever, please let me know, because I love figuring out how we can use these strategies in different classes. So let me know what's worked for you. If you have any other peer feedback tools, I would love to hear about it as well. And then before I go, the last thing I just want to emphasize that it's really important to do peer feedback because it is developing that critical thinking skills. I like doing peer feedback during essay writing or when we're like really looking at a project. So they really get used to looking at the rubric and what is required of them, and like thinking about like evaluating the rubric. It develops a community and structure for sharing work. So again, I want our work to be shared, and I want them to feel comfortable with the sharing with each other, so that we can eventually share like outside of the classroom. And then also that just practicing receiving feedback and thinking of new approaches. Like I know I have like some serious anxiety when I'm having my work reviewed and feedback. And so like the more that we can kind of build in and practice that, because that is going to like, they're going to see some feedback, whether they're colleges or in their careers, and thinking of feedback is not just as something like a negative thing, but like as something positive, and helping them like practice doing that. And then also practice articulating their struggles. Like, so a lot of times when we're talking about feedback, I also allow them like to talk about like what is an area that they're struggling with their project or their essay or whatever we're working on. So they have they're practicing using the language of like asking for help and being very specific on their needs. So lots of ways. I also want to just give a shout out. One of our Brian from Alvarez, he did his, or during the Winter Slam, he did his on Floop, which is a power in peer review. And so I highly recommend checking out his video to learn more about Floop and his strategies for peer review in the classroom. So again, if you have any help, please let me know and I'd be happy.